Hello, listeners. Welcome back. But most of all, welcome back to Aaron. He was missing from the last podcast. He was in. You're in Anchorage, then you were in Idaho, then you're in Montana. So he was coaching a wrestling camp in Anchorage, then coaching some more wrestling in Idaho. Team Alaska. Their shirts got botched, so they turned into Team.
Alska.
Yeah. Team Alska.
Yeah, someone forgot to put an A in on the order.
Yeah, so he coached Team Alska down in Idaho, did pretty good there, and then he went over to Montana for a wedding. So he missed the last podcast, first one he'd ever missed, so now he's back. And he's here to do his famous intro. If you guys have listened before, you've heard the hello and welcome back to another episode of you blah, 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 blah. I'm here alongside, as always, Cobran, and so we're here for another recovery podcast, and Aaron's here to do his intro. So why don't you just do that intro for us, Aaron? He's not going to do it, so I'll do it. I'll do it in Aaron's normal thing. Anyway, so maybe we'll switch it up. But welcome back to you and I for the Kenai. I'm here with Cobran, and Pierre is here. Pierre, why don't you say hi?
Hello again.
Pierre is she doesn't normally talk at a lot of the podcasts, so sometimes it's fun to put her on the spot and at least have her say hello. So, Cobran's here. He's always been here. Frankly, nobody else knows how to run the sound equipment. So, Cobran, Pierre, and then we're here with Aaron's back. As I said, he's back. He was gone, but now he's back. Prodigal son. So we're here with Jaclyn, and she's gonna tell us her recovery story. So this is, as you guys know. Well, maybe you don't, but we actually really do love these recovery stories. Aaron and I were just talking about it earlier, and Cobran and I and Aaron and all of us have talked about it in the past. They're actually really enjoyable for us, and I find myself listening to a lot of the old ones that we've recorded before, and just especially the one that I wasn't around for with Dave. That was a really good one. Talking about medical assisted treatment. So that was a great podcast as well. So we're doing a recovery story with Jaclyn. So Jaclyn, why don't you first of all, thanks for being here. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start it off, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Jaclyn. I was born in Kodiak, Alaska.
Cool. I've never been to Kodiak. I want to go.
Super beautiful, but it's rowdy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a podcast. Was that guy that we did the podcast with, was he from Kodiak, or did he just fish there a lot?
Oh, Lloyd?
Yeah.
I don't think he was from Kodiak. I think he was from Kenai.
I think so too.
Okay.
Yeah, he just fished there.
But he fished a lot there. And it sounded pretty rowdy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Is it a pretty small town like Soldana?
It's an island.
Yeah.
Right, but like the city life,
Cobra,
is it kind of like...
Did you grow up in Kenai?
Yes.
I've been around Alaska, but mostly in Soldana, really.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, it is a very super small community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite like this community. I'd say this community's healthier and a little bit more progressive.
Sure.
If you can even say that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow. Kenai's
I know.
progressive.
Yeah, well, Kodiak makes it
Sure.
look progressive.
Right.
It's got its good qualities,
Sure.
for sure.
I want to do in Kodiak. Kill a deer.
Yeah.
Or a big bear. I heard people do that in Kodiak.
We have huge bears. They're
Huge
really cute,
bears.
though. If you saw one, you wouldn't want to shoot it. It's like
Yeah.
it's so cute.
Yeah, I'm with
Sorry,
Jaclyn
Pierre.
on this one.
Sorry, Pierre.
Maybe cuddle it
Pierre is a
instead.
fish eating only vegetarian.
Oh, an Alaskan vegetarian.
Yeah, she's
I
an
used
Alaskan
to do that.
vegetarian.
Yeah. I'm 28. I'm going to school right now, and
And I already know this, but for the listeners, you're going to KPC.
I am going to KPC.
Which KPC, so that's like UAA, because UAA is it's like a UAA campus in most respects. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's cool. That's a lot of talk right now in like the political situation that we're in. Is for any of you listeners that may not be aware, there's some pretty big governmental things happening, especially fiscally related, and part of that is, I think, a 41% budget reduction with respect to the state's funding for the University of Alaska system, it's bringing up like a lot of fear and a lot of panic for a lot of UA people. So anyway,
Yeah.
you're
it's
still there.
scary.
That's good. I still have another year in that as well. So
Yeah. I feel like I need to hurry up and declare my major so
Sure.
I can finish school there because I don't want to live in Anchorage and go to school. I mean, you know, I just don't.
yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. So I'm grateful this campus is here and open. And as for the budget cuts, yeah, that's scary. And then there's budget cuts with mental health, with institutions. So I'm kind of on both sides of it, you know. Like I'm worried about the school, and then I'm worried about the budget cuts with the recovery community and with mental health, especially. You know, so I see it all over.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people being like, well, it's okay if we like cut funding to like the jails and stuff, but I mean, if we're not taking care of those things, those problems are going to progress and get worse.
And a lot of the mental health community ends up in the jail and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if they don't have a good support system within there.
Then they're going to end up being criminalized for something they may not be able to help.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them, but you know, they are out there.
There's a portion of them.
Yeah. And I see it, and it's just all really sad. It makes me pretty sad,
Yeah.
for sure, because I don't really know what I can do about it personally.
Right.
You know, but I don't know. Here's hoping for I don't know what.
Yeah.
You
Something.
know?
Yeah.
For something, not
Right.
this, you know. Yeah, it's scary. And when people are in fear, I feel like they can't think rationally, and it doesn't like lead to change or progress, you know. For sure. Like when you're in a fearful state of mind, your mind's not going to be working right.
Right.
So like there's a lot of different people that are in that state right now. You know?
Yeah.
Can you relate to that personally throughout your life?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There are a lot of times where, you know, my flight or fight response would come into play, and you just can't think in that state of mind. You just you want to run, or you want to fight, or you freeze, and none of those solve anything, you know, unless you're getting chased by a bear. Like that's not the answer to anything. But yeah, it definitely made things harder, for sure.
So how was growing up? What was that like for you?
Like I said, I was born in Kodiak. My parents, my dad was a
Commercial fisherman.
crab fisherman. Yeah.
She didn't tell me that beforehand, just so you guys know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I was stereotyping.
Yeah.
Kodiak fisherman.
You're not wrong.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Yeah, and my mom was a single parent before that. She had 2 kids before that, my brother and sister. So we have different...
Older than you.
Yeah, they're
Right.
they're a
Yeah.
lot older than me. When I was born, they were like 13 and 14. My mom was pretty young when she had me. She was really young when she had them. She was like 19. So I was born into a kind of dysfunctional family already. Some of my earliest memories were like big parties at our house, and my parents partied. My brother and sister, they were at that age where they partied, and that's...
And if it was a big party, there was not like that many people in Kodiak, right? I mean, I don't know how many precisely. I mean, obviously there's
Yeah.
more than 30, so it's not
Yeah.
like... I mean, there's... I'm not trying to say that, but like... you have a big party, I mean, it's kind of not like a community thing necessarily, but there's a decent amount of people.
Yeah, it was like all my brother and sister's friends.
Yeah.
And I think they were like allowed to hang out there, or they wanted to, because a lot of my parents weren't there most of the time, you know. Like my dad would be out fishing or out partying himself, and my mom kind of did the same thing.
Sure.
So yeah, that was a lot of my earliest memories.
Yeah. And was it basically that your dad continued to fish often? Mm-hmm. Like
he was gone.
He wouldn't skip fishing to party. He would
just when he was in town, yeah. You know,
we're seeing that same thing, like, and it's not like Kodiak specific. It's just like we see it in other areas as well, but it's very much. And if like for any listeners that have really like listened to a lot of these, you'll be like, gosh, stop talking about this. But it's just such like we see a work and hard kind of thing, and then a playing hard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just expected. It's not like, oh man, he's partying a lot. It's like we party a lot. It's a community thing.
It is a community thing. Yeah, it was like that was just what you did there, you know. And if you didn't, it was weird.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to hear your story more to see if this kind of aligns with this. But it's like what we've heard other people in these situations is that the we played hard kind of thing. It was just the normal thing, so it didn't like, you know, if somebody parties a ton, you know, they're drinking all day every day in somewhere where there's just no drinking ever, you might be like, man, that guy might have a little bit of an issue. But in somewhere where it does not contrast as much, it just blends right in, you know, and it can mask or like leave some like maybe some real individual type of like problems, so to speak, covered up for a long time.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like, I think it was on like House where they try to do some kind of the doctor show. This guy, I was telling this guy about House the other day, and he thought House was a house. House is a person. And anyway, they do some kind of imaging, and they can't find what's wrong because it was like a piece of wood that was in the guy's bone, but the wood was like the same density as the bone. So even though it's not bone, it doesn't show up because it just doesn't contrast. It blends right in. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, is when a type of behavior is not contrasting with another behavior, it can just blend right in and still be, even if it is a problematic thing, you know. And for some people, it's not a problem. I mean, you can work hard and you can play hard, and that may involve some partying and just be no big deal.
Yeah.
But in some situations, it can be that wood in the bone kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And it is really hard to tell there because everybody does play hard and they work hard, and I see that a lot with like construction and fishing and slope workers. So I think that's why maybe like substance abuse is such a like huge thing in Alaska. It is anywhere, but like here it's more condensed almost. It's more common.
Sure.
And being on an island, it's
You're very isolated.
yeah, and that's just what it seemed like anybody I was around, that's what their parents did. And maybe that's because I tended to gravitate towards those kind of people, to feel a sense of belonging, you know? But yeah, that's just what you did. And some people could handle it and some people couldn't. And because they're all partying together, it's really hard to differentiate who's getting too messed up, you know, who's taking it too far, you know. But either way, it's just kind of an unhealthy way to live.
Sure.
But you don't realize that at the time. You just don't. You don't think of it like that.
You mentioned some of your earliest memories were the parties. Did you kind of get comfortable in the chaos, or was it just kind of that was life and it was terrifying? Like, how did you feel about it? Do you know? I'm
trying to think. So there were some situations where I was comfortable with it. If it was my parents, I was not, because they were another level. And, you know, they would fight and stuff. And that was scary to see the people that are supposed to be taking care of me like that. But when it was like my brother and sister and their friends, it seemed like fun almost
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Yeah. Like I was hanging out with them, kind of, you know, someone was always like paying attention to me or taking care of me. You know, I thought it was funny or whatever. So with them, there was not as much fear involved.
I think it's interesting about what you said about your parents being the ones that were supposed to take care of you and you being a little bit fearful because of that role. You know, like with your brothers and sisters, it's you don't really expect them at the end of the day to provide for all of your most essential needs. But when you see your parents and they're supposed to be like your ultimate safety net, and you see them perhaps living in ways that may threaten that does, you know, would cause some fear.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that.
And for the first like year or two of my life, they were there,
Right,
and
right.
they were taking all right care, like pretty good care of me. Obviously, I don't really remember, but that's what I was told, and I feel like that's what made it almost scarier because they were there, and that's what I was expecting at first, and then it just kind of went downhill, and I was like, "What's going on?" You know, because that wasn't normal, so that made it even scarier. So my brother and my sister, because they were like 12, 13 when my mom had me, they were expected to step up and help a lot more than they were supposed to, you know. I like my sister always says like you were my first baby because she was there. I mean, and she did a lot for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your sister has more children. I mean, your sister has children today.
Yeah, she has 2 kids.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. My nieces, they're awesome.
Yeah.
My sister's such a great mom. Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
Do you feel bad for that your sister had to carry that burden or something?
Yeah. Like it wasn't fair.
Sure.
You know, it's like because of the dysfunction, their childhoods got messed up because of the situation, and they were forced to like grow up and take responsibility for things that aren't a child's responsibility. So I mean, I'm grateful that like they didn't resent me for it,
Right.
you know, because they could have. But I think we all just kind of realized we were doing the best with what we had at the time. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure it's hard on her though.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's like a lot of guilt there and stuff.
And have you at times kind of blamed yourself in some ways, like without even really knowing it too well?
Probably unconsciously.
Sure.
Probably unconsciously, you know. I think there's a lot of like unprocessed, unconscious like beliefs there that I'm
Right.
still trying to like uncover that
Yeah.
still like affect me today, and I
Right.
just, you know, I just like don't know it because I know like I have a really hard time depending on anyone, because I just don't want to burden anyone, you know. And it makes me uncomfortable to like have to ask anybody for anything or to let anybody try to take care of me for anything, in any way, really. So, I don't know. I'm fiercely independent, I suppose, now,
Yeah.
which isn't a bad thing, but
Right.
it comes from just like a defect,
Sure.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So you're growing up. You're going to school in Kodiak, right?
So when I was about 3 or 4, we moved to Washington.
Okay.
Me and my brother and my sister and my mom. My mom ended
No
up. No, I think she left him for a
Okay.
little while because things got so bad. I think she was drinking and doing drugs, and so was he. And she thought if we moved, she had some family in Washington that things would be better. And they weren't, she was a single parent, and we were there for quite a few years. I think my brother and my sister ended up dropping out of school. My sister went to Job Corps, and my brother moved somewhere else. And we...
Because at this point, they're pretty well adults. They're like 16, 17.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right,
And they're
right.
my sister told me I had
They're
to
over
leave.
it,
Yeah, I had to leave and go start my own life.
Sure.
So that's what they did. And so it was just me and my mom, and she was a drug addict, and we lived in hotels for a while. We lived in community living places. We lived in a homeless shelter. I remember a couple homeless shelters. I learned how to ride my bike in front of a homeless shelter. Yeah, we were there for a couple years. I tried to go to school there. We moved a lot. We moved schools a lot. One of my first school memories was like, we were in this really ghetto part of Washington, and I think I was in like kindergarten, and I had to go through a metal detector to get into the school, to make sure we didn't have any weapons on us. Yeah, so my mom tried her best, but she had a major addiction and some mental afflictions.
Sure.
And she struggled to take care of me because she could barely take care of herself.
Yeah.
So I was not in school a whole lot for a long time. And eventually, I think we were living in the homeless shelter at the time, and I think my brother came back for a little bit, and we moved into this low-income apartment, and my sister came to live with us, and that was good for a little bit. My uncle was living there and stuff, so I wasn't so alone with her. But I was about 5 or 6, and my mom ended up overdosing. Yeah, and I found her, and yeah, and she ended up living though. I went to the neighbors, and they didn't speak any English, but they were able to figure out that I was freaking out, and they called 911.
Okay.
So they were able to save her, and I'm not sure if it was because of that, but right after my dad ended up moving there.
To Washington.
Yeah, and we got a house, and I didn't really remember him, because I was so young when we moved. I barely remembered him, and honestly, I was really uncomfortable around him, because I was almost like, I remember just being like, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Like who's this guy? And my dad, he's like 6'4", so he's just a big dude, so it was like, he's kind of scared me at first. But he got a job there, and we had a stable house for a little bit, and I finally started going to school. I think I was in 2nd grade by then. I started going to school kind of regularly, and yeah, so that was good for a little bit, and then we moved back to Kodiak.
Your whole family, pretty much, except for maybe your brother and sister, but
Yeah, my sister ended up moving to Portland, and she had a kid right after that. And my brother lived in Bellingham, and he's still there actually. But yeah, so the 3 of us moved to Kodiak, And
Probably good to be home for a little at first.
yeah, like I had vague memories of Kodiak, for sure. And it was good because we like moved into an apartment and it was semi-stable.
Yeah.
Stable environment.
A little bit familiar.
Yeah.
Some ways.
I think I
Familiar
was
for a
like,
family.
yeah, I think I was about 8 or 9 by then. So like I was pretty much through my like developmental stages,
Yeah.
and so unfortunately it was pretty unstable during that. But yeah, I started going to school regularly. I got put in Catholic school, and yeah. I think I was in like 3rd grade when I got put in Catholic school, and they were so much further ahead of me. I remember they were doing like multiplication and stuff and learning how to write cursive, and I barely know how to spell, and I barely knew anything like how to add or subtract or anything. In fact, to this day, my freehand is awful. It's atrocious. I have to write in cursive because you can't read, like, if I don't, you can barely read it. Yeah, so, yeah. So we moved back there around 8 or 9 years old.
And so did you stay there the rest, like graduate from Kodiak? Or?
So I went to high school there, and I was a sophomore in high school when I got kicked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
Well, I was there's a dark room there, and I would smoke weed in it sometimes. And on the last day of school, I was just like in there for like 2 hours smoking weed, and they had to evacuate like the art room and like that part of the school. Yeah, that's what they made everybody leave that, like, so they wouldn't get high. And yeah, they've
I've heard of like hotboxing a car, but I've never heard of like hotboxing the east wing of the school.
Kodiak High School.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. So.
Out in a blaze.
Yeah. So it was like, I was like.
So at that point you had started using substances. So when did you kind of first start using substances? What was that like?
So, like I said, one of my first memories was, like, drinking a beer and thinking it was apple juice, and it wasn't, and, like, spitting it out. I was probably, like, 2 or 3 when that happened. And I have like, some memories from way back. But I think it was either I was taking pills from my mom, or I found my dad's weed and I started smoking it. I was probably 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 And from that point, were you pretty regularly using?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as I found that, it was. I think it's because I was at that age where I was like discovering my identity, you know, where like people go through different phases and stuff. I just decided I was just gonna be a stoner.
Yeah, that was your thing.
Yep, yeah, it seemed to fit. And the people that like to smoke seemed to be my type of people. So yeah, I was doing that pretty regularly. Before that, I was I consider myself a pretty good student. I remember when I started smoking heavily, I was like in advanced lit and stuff like that. And right after...
Were you giggling because that was a pun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was getting lit instead of being an advanced lit.
Yeah.
There was some advanced lit going on. But,
Yeah. I was just doing it before I went there.
I'm advanced.
In advance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, after that, it was just like,
Did you ever fall into that trap? I feel like a lot of like kids that smoke weed in high school fall into? You feel like you're smarter when you smoke? Like you're gonna go get better grades because you just feel like you're a little bit smarter, more intelligent, asking yourself deeper questions. I used to generally think that.
Yeah, no, I know, I get that, I get that for sure. I thought I was so smart that I could do it and still be okay.
Yeah, not try to still get good grades.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, because I just thought I was so smart that I would be able to do both. Mm-hmm. And then I would be able to tolerate the people I had to go to school with too.
You feel that?
Yeah, you know, because exactly, because you know, I was a weird kid. You know, obviously, I had a lot of dysfunction growing up, and that, I was definitely a weirdo.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you had kind of a friend group that did kind of sort of the same things that you hung out with.
Yeah, well, what happened was we ended up moving into a trailer park, and
so is your dad still fishing at this point, or is this all?
No,
is that kind of all said and done?
He ended up snapping his Achilles tendon when he was fishing.
Oh, yeah.
And he couldn't fish anymore after that. Yeah. So now he's a slope worker.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, same type of, like, hard labor, same type of schedule. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like a work addict. No.
Workaholic.
Workaholic,
I think that's a TV show, isn't it?
I think, that's
but it is
not
about work. The title is misleading.
I think the title is meant to be very much ironic.
I think I've seen like one episode, but I think it was the very first episode where they're like, drug test today, boys, and the guy turns around and like, what drugs do we tested? Or something like that.
That's the first pilot episode.
That's all of that. That's actually good.
And then I think to beat the system, they just pee in all of them. Like they keep all the cups open, they just pee in all of them, so they're all dirty.
Yeah. Well, there's a scene in there too that they take a bunch of niacin, like a whole bottle of niacin pills. They're all red. Burning.
Oh my
they're
God.
all red and they're like, this isn't gonna work. And so they go to an elementary school, bro, and they're trying to buy pee from elementary schools. It's so bad.
That's bad. Listeners,
hilarious.
Don't do any of that.
Those guys might need to do a podcast.
Yeah, they need to listen to some of these.
Well, that kind of stuff makes sense when you have an addictive thinking.
Right, yeah.
It just makes sense.
It's like you don't decide. Yeah, I think I forget who it was. He was trying to beat these drug tests, and it was like, he's like, I would have done anything besides stop doing drugs. And he had just all these outlandish ideas that he was going to try to do.
He's like keeping those capsules in his sock to keep him warm. Like,
yeah, just all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
that's I had a job for 5 or 6 years where I would carry fake pee on me every day.
Every day?
Every day.
That's dedication.
Yeah, well, it was a really good job, and at any time they could pick me up and be like, let's go.
Fear is a powerful motivator.
Yeah, in fact they did. So like after that I ended up carrying it on me. And it was a construction job, and that was a really common thing with construction, you know. Like I remember like people that were running heavy machinery like showing up still drunk from the night before and stuff like that. You know, not being, you know, we'd just be like, like laugh at it, laugh it off, because it was just normal. It was our normal. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe that's just all I could see.
Sure.
You know? Selective, like, attention.
Right.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
So did you start that construction job after getting kicked out of high school?
When I was 18, I got the job. And after I got kicked out of high school, I moved out of my parents' house, and I moved in with a bunch of friends, my friends that I had growing up, and I started working as a barista. And I was so mad that they kicked me out that I was gonna prove I wasn't stupid, and I went over to the college and I got my my GED, my good enough diploma. And
the GED test actually isn't that easy, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, when I was working in the math lab at the college, just like as a math tutor, there were kids that were like studying for it, and I was like looking at some of them. I mean, if I like really sat down, went to the chapter, and like really like could figure it out, but some of that I was just like, dude, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta look it up, man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And most of it I didn't have to study for because I was like fresh out of high school. So I was able to pass it, and I started taking classes right after that, because I felt.
So you're still kind of progressing at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you had like a pretty significant
Yeah.
bump in the road.
Yeah.
But
Like I was a stoner, but like I wasn't that
you didn't like
crazy.
resign yourself to like a basement and a PlayStation 4 and
Yeah.
like, selling eighths.
Yeah.
Right.
That didn't come till later.
Yeah.
Pretty high functioning.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, I considered myself pretty high functioning. In fact, it was like I almost tried to function higher. Literally, another pun.
Yeah. So
I was high functioning. I was trying to like go above and beyond, to like prove I could still be normal or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I wasn't. I missed high school as soon as I got kicked out, even though I hated it.
Right.
And I just kept on going. That was one thing about me. I never stopped. I was never stagnant. As soon as I got kicked out, I started going to the college, and I started taking college classes, and I was working, and I felt like I needed to leave my parents' home since I wasn't going to school anymore. Yeah, I remember when I told my mom, she's like, just quit, because she had dropped out of high school. So that was her answer. And I was like, okay.
So had your brother and your sister too, right?
Yeah, they quit too. My sister went to Job Corps, and my brother, I'm not sure. He just graduated. He just graduated with his master's in substance abuse, actually.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Congrats to him. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and my sister's working on her, I think, tribal justice. Yeah, she's a social worker now.
Very cool.
And so I was like functioning kind of for a little bit, and I was only drinking like once in a while. I remember the first time I drank, I was like 13. I was 14 maybe, and we blacked out, all of us. And
see, and that's an interesting thing because you said all of us, unless all of those people really went on to like really develop some serious addictions, there were just like sometimes you hear like, man, your very first time you're blacking out, your second time you're blacking out. Like this is when you probably should have been. I mean, granted you're only 13, so there's some things just not going to be that like.
They're not going to.
That's just not going to really come to mind. But there's some things that, like. These were some red flags here.
Yeah.
But if everybody's blacking out, those just seem to be pretty normal.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
So that's interesting. So right away, you're still kind of in this like, oh, I blacked out. Like that could be a problem, but I mean, everybody else around me is as well. You know, so.
And I remember like at high school parties, like people bragging about like, oh, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything.
Right.
Like it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool to.
And it really
to be that
normalized
way.
it as well.
Yeah.
When really it seems like, definitely not an expert in like substance abuse, but it seems like some of those like frequent blackouts are supposed to be some pretty major red flags,
Yeah. And like as far as I don't remember a lot of like addiction, like them talking about addiction in school.
Sure.
Right.
And granted I missed a little school, but like I totally missed the DARE program thing. I don't know. even if I did, I wouldn't think it applied to me, you know. I remember they brought in one lady to talk at the school. It must have been for her, like, because she got in trouble and she had to or something. I remember she was just so unrelatable. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not going to end up like that. You know, it was literally like the commercials where the kid's like, I'm not going to end up like that, you know. Like, it was just, nobody took it seriously. I especially didn't take it seriously. Yeah, so, I mean, as far as school, I feel like the school system there kind of failed me a little bit. I remember talking to counselors. There was obviously problems at home that were overlooked, especially there because it's such a close-knit community. And they were just overlooked, you know. Kids aren't, like, acting out like that for nothing, you know. But I just remember being in trouble a lot. I remember... like the principal, he was the one that kicked me out. I think he ended up getting fired. He was just totally creepy, actually. He was a creeper. And like he would single me out and I would get in trouble for things that other people would not get in trouble for. And there were some teachers that like just could not tolerate me. And granted, I was a hellion. Like, I remember my math class. To get out of my math class, I decided it would be really funny if I would hit on my math teacher.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, right? And the poor guy, you know, he was probably terrified that he was going to get in trouble. So he'd be like, get out, just get out. And I was like, sweet, I'm getting kicked out of class. It's not exactly my fault. You know, so yeah. Well, like, but to I could justify it. And to my parents, they're like, they're gonna blame the school and they're gonna blame the teacher, not me. So I would get kicked out of class, but there was all those things I was doing at like 15, and it was just I would just get in trouble, and and eventually they kicked me out. The next principal came, and she actually was like, I heard about what happened. Do you want to come back to school? But by then I was done. And I had already gotten my GED, and I was like, no way. So yeah, that was another thing, you know. I had grown up, not the easiest childhood, and then school was not easy either. So I had those two things kind of against me. Yeah.
It sounds like you were pretty functional. I mean, that you had plans, or you had some kind of plan for your life, or kind of the progression that you wanted. Is there a point where it started to break down because of substance use, or it started kind of getting out of control? Or did you notice that?
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, I remember I was partying with these people that were older than me, and I was drinking, and the state troopers came, and I got in trouble for drinking. Of course, they left me at the party. They didn't really care. So like, they gave me an MIP, and I had to go to ASAP class. The alcohol safety something, I don't even know what it stands for, but they started drug testing me in that class, and at that time I didn't drink very much, very often, you know. I wasn't a daily drinker or anything. I would go to parties, and I couldn't smoke weed anymore. So I found out two things. One, weed gives me paralyzing social anxiety.
Can I guess the other one?
Huh.
You're gonna find some other drug that gets out of your system in like 3 days, and then you start doing that.
Yeah, they're not gonna pop me for alcohol.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So I would, and I heard this a lot too. I would go drink right after the class. In fact, the people I was in the class with were like people I knew. I heard of people like going to parties afterwards with the people in the class.
just finished class.
Yeah, let's go drink.
Yeah.
You know, and the guy that was teaching it, like, he didn't know anything about addiction. He never drank, never had a problem. He wasn't relatable again, and he was preaching a lot. And when you're that young, you're like, you don't want to hear that.
Yeah, you're just like later nerd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. So it made it just, I remember one thing he taught was like, you're not supposed to drink more than a shot in an hour because your body can't process the alcohol. And
sure.
That had never occurred to me. And I was just like, how are you supposed to get drunk though?
Yeah.
You know?
What's the point of that?
Yeah, like why are you even drinking then?
Idiot,
You know, because like I wasn't drinking to drink. I was drinking to get like out of my mind, basically.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that it didn't occur to me that wasn't normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember lots of times, like, my friends being like, we don't want to drink with you.
So that's a turning point a little bit.
Yeah,
It's starting to be like, hey, you're different than us, like, when it comes to some of this, and we party. You know, it's not like you're not hanging out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not partying at the Catholic school, so to
Yeah.
speak. I mean, you're still... You're with some people who still probably really like... I mean, they like to get drunk, but, like, they don't want to get,
it was like
Jaclyn drunk.
Yeah, exactly. It was my best friend that said that. She's like, I don't want to bring you to a party because you get crazy. And, you know, and I can't remember what I do because I would black out almost every single time unintentionally. And I heard stories about myself and stuff, you know. It got to a point where people would meet me and they go, oh, you're Jaclyn. And I was like, what? You know, like, what did you hear about me? You know?
Like, no, I'm Jaclyn. That's drunk Jaclyn. What we do.
Yeah, and I totally
isn't
separated that, you know?
Church, state.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you know? And it got to a point where I just, like, people would be like, you want to know what you did last night? And I'd be like, nope.
No.
Yeah, and kind of on a serious note, I mean, this is probably the start of, like, some real shame, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is where, like, shame starts to be a thing.
It was.
Because it sounds like what I've heard so far is not a whole lot of shame. I mean, maybe some, like, resentment, some disappointment, and, like, maybe even, like, truly just getting pissed off at times with, like, school and some of your home situations and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of blame.
But now it's kind of like, it's like a me thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm probably
there's something wrong
I'm
with
a problem. Like, I have a defect or something along those lines.
Yeah, and, like, I really just blamed myself.
Sure.
You know, and I thought there was something wrong with me, which there was, but I didn't, like, blame the drinking, you know. I just thought I was messed up.
So did you, at this point, I imagine you're like, okay, I got to figure out a way to, like, drink and still have a good time, but not be, like, the person that people don't want to drink with. Do you kind of, are you like entering kind of like management mode at this point, or what's your thought process going forward at this point?
At that point, like, I was working a lot, so I thought that I was okay because I would be able to work, or, like, go to school and still, like, go get messed up after. And, like...
Which is right along those lines what we've talked about before, is, like, people were pretty much like, hey, man, I was fishing for 20 hours straight. Like, you're telling me you can't go party really hard for a couple of days after that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, very much along those lines. You're like, I was doing my work.
Yeah, I was doing everything I was supposed to do in my mind, so it was okay. And then I started partying with people that got messed up like me. So it wasn't like I never thought I should change or I should stop drinking. It was, I just need to find people that can handle me, you know? And that's what I did, you know? So I started partying with people that were a lot older than me.
And you're probably moving at this point toward people who have some pretty significant problems of their own.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're using to an extent of, like, blackouts all the time,
Yeah.
and they're probably using a little bit harder drugs. Really,
Yeah.
people, and not to even, I mean, because this could be a little bit incorrect, but probably people who, if they stayed on that path, are hopefully in recovery today. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
if that's the road that they were really on.
yeah, and like I don't think a lot of them are.
Sure.
I've lost touch with a lot of them.
Right.
I know a lot of them have tried to go to like rehab and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
but-
So I mean, there was some pretty problematic behaviors in the group at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There totally was. And I at that point I moved to Portland when I was about 19.
By yourself?
I went there with a group of friends.
Okay.
And we were all pretty heavily into we were all alcoholics basically. And I remember going there and we would be like drunk before like 2:00, all of us. And it got to the point where I couldn't drink as much anymore because of all the heavy drinking I had done. And I think my liver just couldn't take it. So it wasn't as fun anymore. It stopped being fun. So my best friend moved there, and I ended up going to see another family member in Washington. And at the time, he was a heroin addict, and he gave me some, and I remember like when I was younger reading about like the Doors and like Nirvana and like, you know, like they were all addicts, and I was like fascinated by it. I thought
that's really glorified.
Oh yeah. And I was like, this is cool, you know. And the family member that gave it to me, I really looked up to, and I really wanted their approval. And so I ended up doing it, and I didn't even really know what I was doing.
Do you know how old you were?
The first
like
time
20, yeah.
I think the first time I was mistaken. Let me go back. Okay, so I was 19 and I was fishing, and this family member knew I was making money, right? So they're like, hey, send me money and I'll send you like a package of like party favors. And like at that time I had done like mushrooms a few times. I was drinking. I smoked weed occasionally still. But nothing too major. You know, that's all still like, that was like a normal thing, you know, because some people can do that normally.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of them, but I thought I was. And
You can
so,
do all of those in Colorado legally today.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was all right. And so I sent him a significant amount of money, and he sent me everything, basically. I ended up, it was kind of like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where he like has a suitcase.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing like in like the span of a month, like I ended up trying acid and ecstasy and cocaine and.
Well, you were still in Oregon, or were you in Oregon, or were you in Alaska?
I was in Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah, I was mistaken. I hadn't.
Gone to Portland.
Yeah, I hadn't gone to Portland yet. And that was a big thing too. At that time I was fishing, and I had just got my passport, and I was planning on going to Costa Rica with my two best friends to go to this surf school. It's called School of the World. And I was fishing all summer, and I was going to make a bunch of money and go there, right? And then I got this package, and ended up being an amateur party favor supplier, basically. And it was really cool to me because people liked me, people wanted to be around me. I made it more fun, and I didn't have to drink now because like drinking hadn't been going too well for me. Yeah, it was about a month before I was supposed to leave to go to the School of the World, and my friend crashed my car into a brand new truck, and I was the passenger. I was letting him drive because I had been drinking, and I didn't have insurance on my car. So about a week later, I get a call from their insurance company going, you don't have insurance. You owe like, I think it was like $15,000 for their truck. And I was screwed. I couldn't buy a ticket anywhere. I couldn't leave. I had to stay in town and work and pay that off. So I didn't go. I ended up losing my deposit to the school and stuff, and yeah. So that was really disappointing. So eventually, after staying in town and working, and I got my first like taste of hard drugs. Eventually, I moved to Portland when I was like 20. So yeah, I was like 19, 20. No, I was 21. Okay, let me start over. So by the time I turned 20, I was in Portland. I turned 21 in Portland. I remember that because I started working as a cocktail waitress as a strip club because there was literally nowhere else to work. I was super uncomfortable with it because I'm not a stripper, basically. I just didn't have it in me, and I remember a guy like tried to shove a $1 bill down my shirt, and I threw it back at him, and I was like, I don't need your money, dude. You know? Yeah. And that's not the environment they wanted, I guess. So, they don't want aggressive cocktail waitresses, which I very much was. I was living there with friends. We were just partying, and I would go to Washington to meet up with that family member every once in a while to get more heroin because I liked it.
Was it mostly heroin at this point? And that was kind of what you
in on. That's what I really
liked.
liked. Yeah. Out of all of them, that's the one that.
Because at that point you had kind of tasted the sample.
Yeah.
Got a good sample.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't, and it made sense because it's a depressant, you know. And I think I must have had a lot of anxiety or something, underlying anxiety that wasn't diagnosed till later. And so it made sense to me that made me feel like I could talk to people, like I could be social, like I could be me, basically. So it didn't start out like I wanted to be messed up. I just wanted to feel okay. My best friend at the time, she wanted to move back to Kodiak. She had gotten into meth, and I hated that drug. I thought it was disgusting, and I remembered my sister even started a program in Kodiak called Don't Meth Up My Life, and I was like avidly against it.
Should get Mike Tyson to advertise that.
All right.
Meth Up My Life.
He's gonna say it like that anyway.
So your sister just hated it.
Yeah.
And you hated it too.
Yeah.
But you guys were, I mean, maybe not your sister, but you were still doing heroin.
Yeah.
You really thought it, and I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just trying to understand where you were coming from. You thought it was like significantly worse than heroin.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I wonder if that has a lot to do with the fact that people, like, I hear like Kurt Cobain. I don't think like, dang, dude, heroin guy that like,
yeah,
committed suicide, right?
Yeah.
He shot himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't hear like, man, kind of a loser, really needed help. Like,
Yeah.
I hear like this glorified genius artist, you know, and that can be the case, but like I don't think heroin did that for him. You know, I don't think heroin made him a genius. I don't think heroin made him an artist. You know,
and it's kind of along the same lines that you were saying, is like you just want to feel like yourself, and Kurt Cobain had severe depression, and then maybe anxiety alongside of it, so that probably the sort of self-medicating.
Yeah, he was bipolar.
It's like that tortured artist.
Yep.
Like, it almost makes him glorified in the sense that it's like, it's sad that like his life had to end so soon. You know what I mean? Like, so people always wonder like, oh, what if? You know, like a lot of these artists, you know, like even like. Like a lot of musicians, especially.
Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain.
There's like that whole 27 club of people that like OD early because it's like that whole like tortured artist thing where like they're so creative, they're so genius, but it comes from a place of like a place that's relatable to a lot of people that isn't as severe because like they feel these things that people feel and they can put them into words and into like a rhythm that's relatable, but at the same time like doing that is so difficult. You know what I mean? Like, like living with that and doing that is so difficult, and then they end up they do become glorified because it's like people that like want to be like them misinterpret that.
But like, how do we? So I guess that's a complex question. Like the tortured artist, right? Or like the, you know, in a lot of like writers and other artists as well, like have like a higher prevalence of certain types of like mental disorders. Like there's a lot of bipolar with like really good artists. Like and really good writers especially as well. I think like
Stephen King and Ernest Hemingway
especially
pretty
some pretty hardcore like bipolar, and like that's like pretty addictions. Some of that's really well documented, like some mental disorders and like genius and creativity as well as like amounts of madness that has been used in like the literature. And it's just like, how do we accept these things, but how do we not like, how do we also create like a realistic narrative, right? A realistic idea, because I will argue, and I could be wrong, but I would investigate this idea that like, you know, what if Kurt Cobain lived? You know, well, I'll tell you what, I hope Kurt Cobain stopped doing heroin eventually to live a fulfilling life.
Right.
You know, I hope that Jimi Hendrix, like, lives on, like, stopped doing an amount of drugs to where he could, to some extent, recover and live a life that didn't absolutely demand that. Like,
and I think that's where, like, the misinterpretation comes from. I think it's a misunderstanding that, like, people, they're like, oh, they were a genius because they did drugs. Like, these helped them be a genius, when really it's just simply detrimental. And I think that's the stuff that, like, catches your eye. You know what I mean? That people kind of just, they get caught up in this facade of, like, the drugs are why they're creative. You know what I mean? When you talk to people about, like, Bob Marley, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, that he smoked pot all the time. That didn't make his voice any better. You know what I mean? That didn't necessarily make him more creative. Like, it's just a part of, like, well, for him it was a religious thing, but, like, for a lot of these other artists, it's, like, it's more detrimental than anything else. Like, it's the reason they died. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of...
I think they had a lot of internal conflict that the expression came out in you know, whatever medium of choice, whether it be art, writing, music, but they definitely had strong emotions that they maybe felt like they couldn't control, that they had to get away from somehow. But that was what it was. It was an escape. But, I mean, at some point you might think, or maybe they had some understanding that if they stopped feeling that way, that their music wouldn't have the same appeal that it did because they couldn't have that sense of raw emotion. So if you don't solve the problem because it will basically destroy the life that you made, well, what better way than to run from it? But then if the drugs get glorified as basically what's giving them that ability, is actually really backwards. That's what they're using to maintain that kind of lifestyle, but it isn't maintainable. Like, that's the thing, is that kind of lifestyle will maybe last for a little bit, but it's not sustainable. And then once it becomes unsustainable, it becomes deadly. Because you can't keep running like that.
And I think a lot of it's like, the glorification comes from like how romanticized it is. You know what I mean?
And it's a problem.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's glamorized. It is.
Yeah.
It's like to me, it was so glamorous and cool, like the old cigarette ads, you know, where they're like, where it's so cool to be smoking. You know, to me, it was so like mysterious and cool, and like it was
grungy.
Yeah, it was grungy and like badass, and like I wish I went with the like music part of it, you know, but I didn't. I went towards that for some reason, and like a lot of artists, I can tell you now, like they would not have got famous if they were like using a bunch of drugs before that, you know, like it's after they get famous. And that's when their like music stops, and like some of them, like the singer from Sublime, he didn't even get famous until after he died. So like it's that, what does that tell you?
Right.
You know, like to me, I'm like, oh cool.
I think it's even prevalent today.
Yeah.
You listen to a wide variety of popular music, and there's a lot of mentioning of basically romanticizing that kind of run and gun life that like like you said, Eric, about the work hard play hard, is that's encouraged. If you just listen to media, is you're going after money and you're blowing it all on whatever makes you feel good, more or less. And so I think that's kind of a supported narrative of like the ideal lifestyle.
Oh yeah, I thought it was super rad to like be running and gunning, and I thought I was a thug for a long time.
Sure.
Honestly, I did. You know, and it was like, you know, there's that music that like talks about all the fun they're having, but they don't talk about the like what's behind it, and like the lows behind it, and the like fear you live in, and it affects you, and like they don't.
I think it offers an amount of like comfort or solace, I guess, like for people who are, let's say they're in a situation where they're using an amount of drugs and alcohol and like blowing off an amount of responsibilities that it's actually like rightfully concerning them, and then they find a way to kind of rationalize it and be like, oh, it's okay, like Kurt Cobain did a lot of heroin, like this person did a lot of heroin. Like, the fact of the matter is that they can find like some comfort in that, like they can rationalize their way to being okay. And the fact of the matter is it's not okay. Like that killed Kurt. Like that killed these people, and these people that were living this type of way, like to live a better life, needed to get this under control. Like to be frank and maybe a little bit rude, there's no valid solace for you here. Like there's no valid comfort for you here. Like it's fake. You know, but it's rightfully, because of where we've placed it in society, it's rightfully tantalizing, right? I mean,
it's very much a mirage,
magnetic.
dude. Yeah. In like all sense of the word, of like being trapped in the desert and seeing the oasis that's not really there. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
and this like, so the way I see addiction is like people that there's the like nature versus nurture, where like you come from a place where you're not nurtured, when you're affected some way, right? And that like for me, I believe it changed my brain development, like it affected my brain development, and a lot of these people that get addicted are like trying to make their brain like make a certain chemical, like maybe there's some type of chemical imbalance there, you know, where like you just aren't okay, and you just don't know what to do, and you find this like a substance that gives you a bunch of dopamine and like serotonin, and maybe if you're lacking that, it could be as simple as that, like and you're gonna be like, oh, I found a way to make it. You know, and that makes you feel normal, like for a little bit. And I feel like that was definitely a huge thing for me, because it just felt like something clicked inside of me when I first started like using drugs and drinking. But of course that doesn't last very long.
You come to the end of the mirage and find out you're still in the desert.
Yeah.
And you've been drinking sand.
Thirsty.
Yeah, totally. And it's like it's an endless cycle. Like you start doing this stuff, like you start using because you are like not happy with your life or the way things have been to cope with hard times. And then you go through more because you were using, and then you have to use more to cope with that, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. And that's pretty much what happened, like I thought I could party because I deserved it, because of my life and the way it was, like granted my life wasn't that hard growing up, it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been a lot easier, though.
Yeah, it could have been a lot easier, for sure. But instead of, like, using that and, like going somewhere good with it, I went somewhere where I felt entitled to to do whatever I wanted.
I get that.
Yeah.
So what was your kind of turning point?
I was 23, and I realized that I was starting to get sick from not having heroin, and I got scared. And I was like, I think this might be a problem. I tried to go to...
So you would, like, just after, like, 12 hours or whatever of not really using, you were getting
I was getting sick. Yeah, I would start going through withdrawals, and that freaked me out. So I decided to go try to get some help. And they were like, I went to an outpatient place, and they were like, I wasn't an IV user, and I wasn't homeless, and I wasn't in trouble with the courts. So they considered me pretty low priority. They're like, you're going to have to wait about 6 months. And to me, I heard, you're not bad enough. Yeah. This isn't bad enough, which is something I struggled with growing up. Like, whatever you're going through isn't bad enough for anybody to care. So I was like, all right, I'll do it on my own. I'll quit on my own. I ended up getting some Suboxone, and I moved back to Kodiak, and I was able to quit for a little while. But...
Was it like 6 months?
It was only a few months. It was only a couple months. Because I didn't know about recovery.
Yeah.
I didn't know about recovery. Sorry, I've been talking a really long time.
You're good.
Oh, no, you're totally
good.
fine.
So
Okay.
is it you just kind of like went like an abstinence kind of thing? Like, I'm just not going to use, and that was pretty well the end of that consideration.
Well,
and that
like,
just didn't seem to work, or
the
what?
only thing I thought I had a problem with was the heroin,
Right,
Sure. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to quit this, and I got off of it, and I didn't know about recovery, so I was still drinking. And I started back at my job where I was working 12, 14 hours a day, and I started using meth to get through it. In my mind, I was able to sober up before work that way. I was able to work long hours.
Work pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it wasn't heroin, so
So did your view on meth kind of change then?
Yeah. See, I had accidentally done it before. Somebody had given it to me and told me it was Coke. And Coke, I don't know if you guys are aware, but it's like a socially acceptable drug.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a party drug.
it's a
Yep.
party drug. Exactly.
I've seen memes about it nowadays.
Yeah, where you're like, and it's like, it's a thing, I've ran into like women that are like mommies and like teachers and like completely normal people that would like want to get Coke from me, and there were teachers and my own boss and stuff like that. So So somebody had given it to me, and it wasn't. And after that, because I believe because of the amount of dopamine it gives your brain, other drugs that don't give your brain that amount of dopamine just don't work after that. Like, it just... So when I did try to do coke after that, it just didn't work. It didn't do anything. It just, like, the hole that, like... the receptor in my brain that took in the dopamine was like way too big now, and I just didn't feel anything from it. So by that time it was just like where I was from, a lot of people were doing meth, and again it was like it was kind of a normal thing for the people I was around, at least. I still knew to hide it from a lot of people, and I did. I hid it from a lot of my like friends and my family, you know, because my sister's running that program at the time, you know, and the Don't Meth Up My Life, and I'm doing it. So, yeah, it wasn't too long after that I started using heroin again.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was on this slippery slope right back to your drug of choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after that, I couldn't work anymore because I was just, I couldn't maintain.
Yeah.
And my season was ending anyways, so I ended up quitting early. The way I took care of my habit was by selling drugs. And I thought that was okay if I wasn't paying for it, you know. Like, my bottom... I didn't reach it because I just kept making it lower.
Yeah.
You know? I was like, if I can work, then I can do drugs. And then I was like, well, if I'm not paying money for drugs, then I can do drugs, you know?
You're like, wait, is this rock? You're like, dynamite. Boom.
Yeah.
We're going deeper.
Yeah. Which is funny because that's what I was doing. That's what my job was before.
Sure.
I was handling dynamite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was handling explosives before that.
She knew about destroying rock bottoms.
So it just, you know, came natural. Yeah.
Set your standards lower, one compromise at a time.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, all the while, I'm not even, like, aware that I'm, like, devaluing, like, going against my morals and, like, my self-worth and stuff, and, like, making myself feel this shame and, like, trying to, like, not being able to identify that because I was never taught that kind of stuff, you know? And just being like, oh, I feel horrible. I have to make this feeling go away at any cost necessary, even if it means getting, like, plastered at, like, noon. Yeah. You know? Because I just didn't know how else to process at that point. And
at this point, so you said your bottom, so to speak, is getting deeper and deeper. And at this point, are you like, man, I'm an addict, I need help, I am that guy, like, or that gal, you know, I am that gal that is just, I'm the addict? Or is it just like, well, I'm not doing this, so I'm not a mixture of both? Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, at that point I was doing all of it, and my own drug dealer was like, you're a mess. You know?
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, right? And I was like, oh, man, you're the guy that I don't even want to be seen with in public, and you're calling me a mess? Like, uh-oh. You know? Of course, he was also enabling me, you know, because I was living with him and stuff. And he... was actually giving me the heroin, like, before I wanted to even do it again. So he's the one that provided that, and kind of controlled it for a long time for me. I would go on vacations, you know, we'd go to, like, Las Vegas, or, like, we went to the Virgin Islands, and I would, like, quit for, like, a month, you know, and I thought I didn't have a problem because I was able to quit. And I would go dry out for a little while, always intending to go back to the drugs, though. I did that. I traveled around for about 2 or 3 years doing that. and I think my lowest was we were in the Philippines, and him and I got in a fight, and I left for about 2 or 3 days. And I get on a computer because I didn't have a phone or anything there, and I go on my Facebook, and there's a missing poster of me. And everybody back home thinks I'm missing, and like there's people like, she got sold into the sex trade, you know, like like people thought I was dead, you know, my family and stuff, and I just have all these messages like, you need to call your mom. So I went missing internationally, and yeah, by then it was like no secret, like I couldn't hide it anymore, that I was just a mess. So eventually I'm in Anchorage by this time. I still can't work or anything, and I just I ended up homeless. I lost everything. I even lost my cat. That was heartbreaking. That was my bottom right there. Not being able to take care of my cat, and having to give her away because she could have a better life without me. Like, that was like my kid, basically, you know. And that was really heartbreaking for me. So I ended up calling my parents and being like, look, I need help. And my mom sent me this number of this girl in Anchorage and told me to call her, so I did. And she told me about this thing called the bridge device. The bridge device, it's a little like device you put on your head, and it's got like 4 metal prongs, and they stick it in the side of your face, and it sends electrical pulses to your brain every like 3 to 5 seconds, and it's supposed to take you through accelerated opiate withdrawals. It curbs the part of your brain that tells you I'm in pain and I need more, because that's what happens when you're like addicted to heroin, because you're not actually in pain and you don't actually need more, but your brain makes you think that. So this device cuts that off. So you don't feel very good, but you're not like dying. So I asked my parents if they would help me pay for it. It was like $300, and I got it put on. And for like 5 to 7 days, I went through an accelerated withdrawal. And that was the last time I have used opiates of any kind. That was.
So it worked.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That was.
I've never even heard of that thing.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Whoa.
a robot.
Yeah,
I was like, that's an Ender's Game.
Right?
Sci-fi.
I know. So the Lazarus
Wow.
Project in Anchorage does it, and like
Anchorage, Mars.
Well, I think
Lazarus
so. I think
Project.
it's
That's
something they
interesting.
invented for like housewives that like in Hollywood that like get addicted to pain pills, and they have to go through their like withdrawal and like hush hush quiet. So it's not like a thing they don't have it like a lot of places.
Yeah, you don't go pick it up at Walgreens necessarily.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think they have it in like the really like fancy rehabs and stuff.
Sure.
And I think they were just doing trial runs here, and I just like happened to hear about it.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was really lucky, and
Hope you don't have like a piece of metal growing in your head right now.
yeah, no, they were like, it was just like little
If you
prongs.
used the Lazarus
Right.
device in 2014, you may be entitled to compensation.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I know. No, I went through lots of metal detectors since then, so I think
You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But I was like, I made a joke about it. I was like, I'm a cyborg now.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because like I have this metal thing attached to my face, and like,
Yeah.
and in fact, I was like hanging out with like a lot of druggies then still, because I still was like in that lifestyle, and I was like going like this and freaking them out and making them think I was like a cop or something. I was like, I'm not fucking with them.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did. Yeah.
God, of course.
he's here.
Yeah.
You know?
There's those YouTube videos of
Dude,
that guy that goes to Walmart. He wears a Bluetooth. Have you guys seen that? He goes to Walmart and he has a Bluetooth and he like goes up to someone and like Aaron's wearing a green shirt right now. Just so you guys know. So he walks up to a guy and he goes. Yeah, he's right. He's right here. He's got a green shirt on, long sleeve, dark hair. Yeah. You can take him down about 5 seconds. Yeah, you're good. And so all these guys are like. Whoa! They're out of there. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it looked like. It looked like a little like Bluetooth device, except it had little like wires hanging out of it. So it literally looked like I was wired. You know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a wire before. I've only seen one time when I was in Puerto Rico, and we'd asked this guy if he knew where to get any weed, and he was like, "Nope." And he lifts his shirt up to show us he's wearing a wire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. Cut.
Yeah, like he obviously didn't want to be doing it.
We're the law.
Yeah, it's like, whoops, you know. Yeah, so that was the first time I'd seen that. So that was the last time I had done opiates. And, like, I don't think it was, like, a miracle cure or anything.
Sure. Right.
I was done.
Yeah.
Like, I was done. You know,
I think that's important.
That's what we hear. Yeah, they're like emotionally just so over it.
Yeah,
just,
I was. I had went through so much. You know, like I went through I put myself through a lot. You know, like I think one of the like scarier things I went through was like being jumped and beat up by like 3 big dudes when I was in Vegas, like literally right behind a casino, just because I was looking for drugs, you know, and that didn't scare me enough until like later. Then things like that, a couple more things like that happened, and but it wasn't all that like made me done. It was just something in me that I was just
so tired. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like people are just like so tired. Like they've spun their wheels in the same place. Like they've crashed in the same exact way. You know, like you get in the fast car and you wreck it into the same effing wall. And you're just finding like this game sucks, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so done with
I'm
this.
over it.
Yeah. It's just not that fun anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And it stopped being fun, which is like the whole point of why I like had started doing what I was doing in the first place. I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to party, and I wanted to be crazy, and I figured I might as well do it while I'm young, you know, and I did, but, you know, it turned into, like, 8 or 9 years, and I was like, okay, I'm getting too old for this. I need to go back to school. I need, like, I gotta stop. Like, this, you know.
You got off track.
Yeah, yeah. I was just trying to have fun. I wasn't trying to, like, I didn't mean for all this to happen, you know? But it just did.
I was just trying to drink, party, have a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Not get beat up outside the casino.
Yeah, I wasn't trying, you know, but that's what happens when you combine, you know, there was a lot of addiction in my family, and with everything else, it was a perfect storm. So that was about 2 years ago that I did that. I ended up leaving Anchorage. I came here to live with my parents.
So they're living in the Soldotna Kenai area.
Yeah, I came here to live with them. I ended up leaving the guy I was with.
So maybe you don't have to answer this necessarily, but sounds like they were struggling when you were younger, but they obviously got to a place where they weren't at rock bottom.
They both hit their bottoms a lot, like a longer time ago.
Sure.
They still both have problems, but they're older and yeah, they're just older now, and they're stable. So more stable than me. At that point, so you know, I didn't know where else to go. So, I left Anchorage, thank God, and came here, and I was planning on going to rehab because I didn't know what else to do. I figured that would probably be the best route. And I looked up online how to like stop using a lot of times, and I read about this thing called harm reduction, where you don't want to get off of everything at once, because that's just
a lot.
Yeah, you know, like, so I started one drug at a time, one substance at a time. And when I moved into my parents' house, I was able to get off of the meth, which I didn't even like doing. I still hated it. I hated the way it made me feel, but it gave my brain that like burst of like dopamine, like that made me want to exist, essentially. So I would do it even though I hated it.
Yeah.
So when I got off of that, I was super relieved. And it was easy to stay off of that because I wasn't around it all the time anymore. And then I eventually quit drinking too. I had to wait about a month to get into rehab, at least. But by then I had been through detox and everything. Not a detox center, but I had detoxed from everything. And I ended up going to rehab August 14th, 2017. I remember the day I found out I was going, I went and had a beer with my dad because I was like, oh shit, if I'm going to rehab, I better have a drink, you know, because that was my best thinking. And it just shows you how much my family knows about addiction, because he was like, yeah, you know, that makes sense. That's what I would do, you know.
It's on me, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my baby girl.
Cheers.
Cleaning up, going to rehab.
Yeah.
And I remember having that beer and being like, realizing I wasn't normal, because I was like, I don't even want to drink. I want to be drunk.
Yeah.
Like, I don't just want to,
like, this isn't
like,
fun.
this isn't enough. Like, I just want to, like, I just want more.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no satisfaction in it.
Yeah.
Because
I think I said this on an episode before, but somebody told me, they said, you know, one of my friends told me that, you know what crack tastes like? And I was like, what? They said, crack tastes like more. More. Sco, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I've always been like that. I've always had poor impulse control. I've always not known when to stop with everything. Anything that makes me feel good, I just need more. Yeah, you should see me with a gallon of ice cream, you know.
Just ride it until the wheels fall off.
Yeah, man.
And keep going for a little bit just to see if they'll come back.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, if it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I very much believe in addictive personalities.
When you you said you had like you were gonna go to rehab like the next day or something. Where did you go?
I went to Serenity House.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you complete that?
I did. Yeah, I did. I went to Serenity House for about 30. It was like 40 days.
What was that like?
It was like going back to elementary school. Honestly, like, we did arts and crafts. Like, we sat around in a circle, like, with our legs crossed and talked about our feelings. Like, it was like an experience. Like, and I felt like I picked up right where I left off. Like, it was like I woke up one day and I was still 12 or 13 in my brain. You know, and I started looking at my clothes and my taste in music and my sense of humor, and I was like, oh my God, I literally stopped growing there, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much what happened. And I was like, I need to continue growing. So I feel like I'm a little bit immature, and I feel like a lot of people that were there were. And that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. It makes sense to me. And I don't know if I, like, screwed up my, like, brain development. Because, like, I remember I thought I was so smart about it when I started drinking heavily when I was, like, 19. I was like, this is when the brain is pretty much done developing anyways. You know, that's what I, like, truly believed. And so I'm good. And come to find out, like, women's brains don't even stop developing until they're, like, 26 or something like that. Yeah, 26. Yeah, they're not, like, fully developed till then. And I was like, oh. You know? I missed the bus on that, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
But,
I've actually, it's funny you say that. I've had such similar thinking, except because I, like in the psych program and otherwise as well, just figuring out, like, I like politics and stuff, and so it's like, when, like should things be legal, should things not be illegal, like what's our role there government wise, and so, like, especially as marijuana has become legal, like in Alaska and whatnot and everything, like the more I've read and what I've heard more is kind of like there might not be like that many risks smoking weed in adulthood. Like maybe not that many for like a typical adult. Like from time to time, it may be a more minimal thing. Yeah. And mind you, there's a lot of qualifiers there. Maybe, not sure. Okay. Yeah. But then like one of the things that I'm also like that I've read and heard a lot is like. But man, smoking weed like in your adolescence, like really, we believe has like some pretty negative consequences on your brain development that you can't go back. I mean, it's not like it's done. And I'm just like, dang it, man! Now that I don't smoke weed, like but like now like my brain is like a little bit messed with and like can't go back. I'm like, come on, dude, not fair.
Redo, please.
Can I get a new brain? Run it again.
Yeah, right. I know, and if I could redo it, you know, I would do a lot of things differently. But like I didn't think it was that bad. You know, it was like, of course, like any stoner, it's a plant. You know, like, but it really did mess with me. Like, it gave me horrible anxiety, and like I just didn't even like realize it because I was too stoned to like realize that I was like having paralyzing like anxiety from it. And like, I've read a lot of different things about it, and I don't know how anybody can function like that. Honestly, I don't know what I was doing.
Sure,
truly.
That happens. Like when I go back home, sometimes you know people will be like smoking weed and driving, and like even like it's legal here now. You know what I mean? I'm like,
can't smoke weed and drive, dude.
Still a DUI.
Well, no, I know here, but like back home where it's like it's not legal to possess. It's definitely not legal to drive under. You know what I mean? Like everything about it's completely illegal. I'm like, dude, like if you get pulled over, like,
but you're still doing it.
Yeah, like dude, if you get pulled over, like you're so effed, dude. Like that's gonna be a lot of trouble. You're gonna get in a lot of trouble if you do that. You know what I mean? And like thinking back when I was like 15, 16, like drinking, smoking, driving around like for fun. I'm like, what an idiot, dude. Like this guy. Yeah. Like it's the same thing. Like you wish you could go back and be like, first of all, thankful you didn't get in trouble then. Yeah. Now, you know what I mean? But like even looking back, you're like, dude, I would not do that twice. Like, that just doesn't seem like a smart thing to do.
If you wouldn't have been smoking weed when you messed up your brain, dude, like, who knows? You could be the next Steve Jobs, but now you can't.
Yeah.
Now you're screwed.
Yeah. Now I'm the next Elizabeth Holmes.
You're never going to be the Steve Jobs.
That was his dream. It's over.
Now you're done.
I was definitely heading there.
I was on my way. Then I had a joint at 15. Dang it.
Yeah. Just takes one.
We're restarting the DARE program.
Yeah.
Smoke at 15, your life is over.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Well, I feel like if you're held accountable like that and you realize that, because I just didn't make that connection, you know? Yeah. I didn't realize I was damaging anything. Yeah. Like, because if I had thought about it and thought I was hurting myself in any way, that would have been really upsetting. Like, especially how, like, teenagers are really self-centered and they're, like, really, like, superficial. And, like, if I had thought, like, oh, this might make my teeth kind of brown, or like this might like affect the way I look somehow, or like my brain, or how I act. You know, if I had made that connection, I would have been like, oh, no way, you know, like I don't want to be different, or I don't want this to affect me in any way. But I didn't realize that, you know, for sure. You know, I remember like doing the drugs and like taking what I thought were precautions to like make sure like my teeth didn't get messed up, and like it was very superficial in a way, which is kind of weird. Mm-hmm. But after a while, you just stop caring.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Let some things go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, so I completed the program. I started doing outpatient, and
were there some things that you were in those like first like 50 days or whatever you said you were in Serenity for? Did you say 40 days?
Yeah.
Like that first 50 days that was harder than you thought, or easier than you thought?
Like. It was, I had a lot of stuff pop up that, I had forgotten about, you know, like, because of traumatic experiences I went through, I found out about PTSD. I didn't know about it. I didn't realize that I might have it. And it kind of made sense. So I had some symptoms from that, like pop up, some like flashbacks, and some really unstable emotions because of it, and that I'd forgotten that I used to have before I started using, which I think the using kind of covered up, you know, because I used to be just kind of a really like rowdy, unstable, like angry person that would just get mad at the drop of a hat, because like old wounds would get triggered and I wouldn't even realize it, and I would just get so upset over what seemed like nothing, and I just thought I was nuts, you know. I was like, there's something wrong with me, I'm crazy, like I didn't even realize what was going on.
Tortured artists.
Yeah, or torture. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, when I started finding that stuff out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, oh, okay.
Like there are some things that cause some of this stuff to some extent, and if I was to somehow and in some ways address it,
yeah,
I may be better off.
Yeah, then maybe I would figure out a different way to cope. Which was kind of relieving in a way.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Some things that were hard were like, I immediately wanted to like find something else to like fill that like dopamine rush, like, you know, like sugar, caffeine, you know, nicotine, which like I didn't drink coffee before, like really, and I didn't really much care for nicotine. I wasn't into it. But when I didn't have anything else, that's what it turned to. Yeah, so those were some hard things. I mean, of course, right away I wanted to like try and find a relationship and find someone to like be with, to keep me occupied almost in a way. As messed up as that sounds, that's what the underlying thing was like. Yeah, so I had to deal with that. And the type of people I was meeting in rehab were like not people that should be dating. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you know. But yeah. So I had to deal with some stuff like that. Yeah, I wanted to get out right away, and I didn't even realize why, you know. I was still in that mode, like, gotta go. And I ended up moving into my parents' house, which was a really poor decision on my part. because my mom was kind of like my original like drug dealer. And she doesn't know how else to cope with life. So moving in there was a really unhealthy environment for me. I made that choice though. I lived there for about 4 months. I ended up getting in a car crash right after I got out of rehab because I hadn't driven in the snow and ice in a while, and I didn't have studs on my truck yet, and ended up rolling my truck into a ditch. First time I'd gotten a car wreck completely clean and sober. It was kind of scary. I ended up breaking a bone in my collarbone, and they had to do this scan on me to see if I had, they were worried I bruised my heart. And about a month later, they called me and they said they found a lump on my thyroid. And I had to get a biopsy, and I don't even know what that was really. And then another month goes by, and they call me and they tell me that there was cancernoma in my thyroid. And I was like, okay, like didn't think anything of it. And I was at the gym and I was like, all right, thanks, bye. And I called them back and I was like, wait, what? What's And they're like thyroid cancer. And I was like, oh my God, so I have cancer.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I was like,
scary.
what? And the guy tells me it's not a big deal and it's super common. And of course I'm like,
it's cancer.
Yeah, it's cancer. What?
Excuse me?
Like...
How's this worded?
Yeah. Like...
I'm gonna be scared.
Yeah, exactly. So they had to do surgery right away to get it taken out, which was probably a good thing because I literally had tickets to Florida, and I was planning to go to Florida for a weekend to go to a Wu-Tang concert. With
You're serious?
Yeah.
Dude, if I was a drug addiction counselor, I'd be like, Jaclyn, you have been out of rehab for less than 6 months, and you are considering going to a Wu-Tang concert in Florida? Do you really think this is your best judgment?
I know.
Dang.
No,
Okay.
I know,
So,
right? Yeah,
And
but I was like, that
Jaclyn
makes
looks
sense.
right at you and says, the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right. Well, haven't you heard?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, so I was literally on my way there, like my bag was packed. And I decided not to go because of that.
Good call.
Yeah, right?
Good call. Wow.
So, it could have literally, like, in a weird way saved my life.
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
like, on my way. I was not planning on doing very much, like, follow-up care with this. I thought I'd go to rehab and I'll be good.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody has to know that I screwed up my life for the last, like, few years and, like, I can just, like, go back to normal. Which is not how things work if you were never normal,
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so I had to go through 2 surgeries and radiation twice over the last, like, year and a half. When I heard that, I came here because I didn't know what else to do, and my first instinct was, like, to get messed up, to cover it up.
You were pretty scared, huh?
Yeah, I just didn't know how else to cope with it.
Yeah.
Like, really, like what am I supposed to do? And there was a time in my life where I would use that as an excuse to go get whatever prescriptions I wanted and like literally party my way into the ground. And I would think it was like fun. Yeah, so I just had my last radiation, radioiodine therapy, like 2 months ago, and it ended up working. So they were able to like wipe out all the cancer in my body, which is awesome. But I remember after my first surgery, I woke up from it, and I was still feeling the effects of the fentanyl they gave me, and fentanyl was one of the last like drugs I had used a lot of, which is really dangerous, scary stuff. I remember using it and not being able to breathe. Because like I think maybe my heart was stopping or something, but I know it causes respiratory failure.
Yeah, you could have very well been ODing at that point.
I think I was a little bit, but I didn't care at that point in my life. So I woke up and I was still feeling the effects of that, and I was like, ew, this feels so gross. What is this feeling? Like I hated it. And I was like, oh my God, it's the drugs. And I was like, that was like a huge thing for me where I was like, whoa, I can't do drugs anymore, like ever again. Like that, like, because before that I went to rehab and I like did the like lip service and stuff, and I did what I thought I had to do, and I really didn't want to use again, but at the same time I had that reservation where if this doesn't work out for me, I could always go back and just do that for the rest of my life.
And you're pretty young, so it seems like one of the things we've heard before is like when people are young and getting sober is like it's hard they overwhelmed by the idea of like I'm never gonna do drugs again. I mean that's an overwhelming thought. They're like, man, that's a lot of life, and that's not a lot of drugs. You know? So it's I mean that's probably that was daunting, you know. Almost seems unrealistic as well. I mean, it seems like that's what we hear.
Yeah, and it's not realistic if you think about it, you know, because how am I supposed to know? How is anybody supposed to know? Yeah, I could want that, but, you know, you never know. You just never know. And there was a time in my life where I firmly, like, after that, I firmly believed I would never use drugs again, and then that got scary for me again. Like, am I really never going to, like, drink again? Like, I can at least do that, right? Like, am I never, you know, like... So, after that, I was like, wow, this isn't the answer anymore. I'm going to have to figure out another way to live. So, I started going back into outpatient. I was doing a little bit of school online. I was enrolled full-time before I got diagnosed with cancer to go full-time in the spring, but I couldn't after that, so I just took like 2 online classes. And I started doing therapy like once a week. I started doing this EMDR therapy, which is really good for like PTSD, to reprocess old memories and trauma, and to do it in a safe environment where you can safely express the things you may have not been safe to express at those times. And that really helps with some of the symptoms I was having, and like some of the like anger I went through, and like the self-destructive tendencies. It really kind of snuffed them out a little bit, which is really cool. Because that was one thing that would make me probably use again, would to have to deal with that and like literally not know how to process it. I found a way to process it through therapy. I'm still doing therapy once a week. I've been doing it for almost 2 years. And it's super helpful. It is super helpful. Sometimes I don't want to go. But I do. I kind of feel like it's a job almost.
Yeah, it's a lot of, I mean, it's work in some ways, right?
Yeah. So I've just been kind of trying to go hard on that. And getting back in school really, really helps with my recovery, because it makes me feel like I'm making up for like lost time, and I'm doing what I wanted to do when I first started going really far downhill. And I do a lot of like like community stuff. I work a lot with like Narcotics Anonymous, and I help out there, helping like do functions and stuff, which is really cool because we do stuff like sober camping and like we'll have like dances, like we're having prom this weekend, like, which I was too messed up to go to my prom, and I think that's a lot of their stories, right? Mm-hmm. So we get to like do that stuff. Yeah. Right? I know. Yeah, so we get to go do that stuff, and we get to do it like sober. Cool. Yeah.
Redo those.
Yeah. Which really is kind of awesome. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm stoked on that. So doing that stuff really helps. I wasn't planning on living here. I wasn't planning on staying here. I wanted to go back to Kodiak, which would have been a really terrible idea for me because they have a huge substance abuse problem there and not a lot of resources. They just, I don't.
And it seems like, I mean, I can't speak like too much comparatively, but it's, I mean, on the peninsula here in Soldotna, between like the hospital and Serenity and all of the things that fall under the hospital, with the detox and transitional living and Serenity, I mean, there are a lot of resources.
There are, yeah. Like, after I got out of Serenity House, I waited about 4 months to get into the transitional living, and that was super helpful.
Oh, so you did?
Me. Yeah, I lived there. I lived there for like almost 6 months.
Awesome.
Yeah, and
what was that like? We haven't. I don't know if we've had, and if there have been, it hasn't really been discussed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It seems truly to be able to go from here to go from like, oh my gosh, I can't use for like very many hours. I can't like miss many hours of using without being sick. So then they're in detox, to then inpatient rehab, to then transitional living for an extensive amount of time. I mean, you can really go from A to Z here, which is impressive.
Yeah, and that was like, I was so grateful to move in there. Like, I remember that was one of the first times I like had tears of joy. Which is like weird for like someone to be so stoked to like move into a place like that, especially when I had a comfortable place to live, but it was not healthy. And my emotional and mental growth had really stunted when I went there because of it wasn't my parents, it was the experiences I had with them that was constantly brought up by being around them.
Just being back in like that kind of dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's like I saw something that said you can't heal in the place you got sick in. And I was like, oh man, that's completely true for that situation. So I mean, I stalled out for quite a few months. But when I got into the transitional housing, it was really good. I was able to come here full time, go to school, and really work on myself and focus on myself and figure out who I was. And it was almost like a dorm setting. I lived in the dorms when I went to college in Anchorage. And it was like that kind of setting, pretty much. Even the rooms looked just like it, the beds, everything. We had a cook there, and we had our own little gym there, and it was really cool. There are a lot of people to play music with there. You know, I play guitar and I sing, and there's a lot of musicians. There are a lot of artists. I think when I went to rehab, every single person in that house knew how to play an instrument.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? Yeah, or they were like, and they were artists too, like, you know, like they knew how to draw or paint or whatever, which was really like, oh wow, you know, how many artists are out there that are just like snuffing out their talent with drugs and alcohol, you know? 'Cause I mean, that's what I did for years. I learned how to play guitar and I didn't pick it up for years, you know? Yeah. So living in the transitional house really, really, really helped a lot. There was that support. I was constantly forced to be around people that were doing the same thing I was doing. Because when you're recovering, if you get around people that are like normal, that can like drink socially, or like, it makes you
A little sad.
Yeah. Well, you're like, it's not so, it's like, you're like, well, maybe I can too. Like, I want to too, you know? And they may not understand that it's not a good idea for you, you know? And so I spent a lot of time being sad about it, and I spent a lot of time being around other people that were in the same boat, so I didn't have to explain myself, you know, and I didn't have to spend so much energy trying to not. I was just like safe to be kind of broken and fixing myself and working on myself. So that was super helpful. Everybody there was really supportive and great, and it helped me establish a routine. I was doing things like waking up and making my bed in the morning because they force you to, and you'd be surprised how much that helps. First, it helps you get out of bed because like you have to make it, and you're not going to get back in your bed after you make it. You know what I mean? And it gives you a sense of accomplishment, like first thing in the morning, like I did something. And I think that's why they make people in the army do that and stuff too. So there was just little things like that. It gave me a set schedule, which I don't think I'd ever had in my freaking entire life.
Some structure.
Some structure, right? And rules and like stuff I had to do, which I had never followed rules before if they were given to me, and I never wanted to, and I always found ways around it, and so it was really like helpful. It was super helpful, and it's different.
It sounds like since you never got to experience that, once you were kind of put through it, was that a big revelation on, hey, this is what a healthy lifestyle looks like, and it feels good too.
Yeah, like, whoa, I thrive off of structure and like routine. Like, because I always thought I was just like a gypsy, you know, and that's the lifestyle for me, and don't get me wrong, that's fun, you know, but at the same time, it's not very productive, and I got a lot more done staying in one place and just like sticking to a routine and having a like set like way, you know, because I wasted a lot of time not being that way, So after about 6 months, I was able to get my own apartment. One of the first times I had had a place on my own, where there weren't other people living with me. It was the first time I'd ever, you know, I'd gotten other places and moved people in with me. Because I couldn't stand being alone. It was no fun, you know? But at that time, after living with like 12 separate human beings, I just wanted to be alone. It was just me and my tree, my little bonsai tree.
Oh, you had one of those?
Yeah.
You like clip them up?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, you are supposed to clip them then, okay. So I'm not just, because I was doing that to it.
The Karate Kid, bro. You ever watched The Karate Kid?
I think you and I watched that together, didn't we?
Yes, it's the best movie ever.
Paint the fence.
Well, yeah, bro. He teaches him karate. Before that, they talk about bonsai trees and like creativity and patience and caring for this tree.
You and I watched that together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I own it. It's like one of 4 movies I own.
You own it.
Dude, it's the best.
I own it.
I do.
Yeah, dude, I own it.
Me and all my pretentious self own the Karate Kid.
Name dropping.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi, my hero. I think in life I strive to be Mr. Miyagi.
Isn't the kid's name like Daniel or something? What's the kid's
Danielson.
He's like the whitest kid ever.
Yeah, dude, he's Italian. His name's Ralph Macchio. He's the actor.
Oh,
but yeah, his name's Daniel. He is the whitest guy ever.
Yeah.
Daniel's son, yeah. And he gets mad, right? Because he's like, I never actually do any karate.
Yeah, dude. And then there's that epic breakthrough scene where Mr. Miyagi's throwing punches and he's painting the fence, waxing the car. Yeah, it's sick, dude. It's the best movie I've ever seen.
We've already talked about Karate Kid a couple times in these different episodes. It's weird how it comes up so much.
Isn't it weird how everything can just come back to Karate Kid?
Yeah. You can learn a lot from the Karate Kid.
I think it's really your fault.
Well, dude, Zach was literally painting a fence to learn patience.
But you're kind of the guy that keeps bringing it up.
Because it's universal. It's universally the best movie ever.
Who can't relate to that?
Who can't relate to the Karate Kid?
Oh man. So yeah, bonsai tree. Those seem a little bit hipster.
Yeah,
They're kind of
probably.
Succulents, but with more dedication.
Yeah, probably.
I want a cool bonsai tree.
Yeah, your bonsai tree would be terrible.
No, it'd be awesome.
My sister
Where'd
sent
you
it
get
to my mom.
Online?
She sent it to my mom from Amazon. Yeah,
Nice.
I know, right?
I'm
Yeah.
gonna get it. I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. They're really rad. You can just like put water in this little pool next to it, and it sucks it through this like clay pot.
Kind of self feeds it. Like
Yeah,
have you ever fed a cat with? Oh, sorry, I know you used to have a cat.
No, it's okay. I'm processing it.
And it used to like you can put the food in the container and then it like empties out here and it feeds back into itself.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, but
Kind of like
reverse.
that, yeah.
So
which
low
is
maintenance
great.
kind
Yeah,
of thing.
exactly, which is great because like if I had to water it every day, I don't know, man. You know, sometimes I forget to drink water. Like how? Yeah, exactly.
Dude.
So I'm taking care of this tree in my place, and like that's really cool. And
I think my friend's kid had an alarm that literally would go off every X amount of time and say, "Drink more water." I was gonna say
there's water
that's a whole
bubbles that
new
do
level
that.
of like automated existence. Must drink water.
Yeah.
You're so good.
Now it's up.
That's
You
intense.
know what time it is?
I have
It's water time.
All right.
I think they drank water in the Karate Kid.
Probably not.
Nah, dude, they don't. Dude.
He knows. He
Dude,
owns
they
it.
do, bro. They do go to the ocean though and work on karate. It's sick. It's sick. That's one of my favorite scenes, bro. Daniel's son's practicing his kicks in the ocean because the ocean keeps hitting him as he's kicking, to build resistance. Yeah, it's sweet, dude. And then he learns how to kick well, I guess.
Look, now everyone's drinking water.
Oh, that
That's
water's
good.
not good. Look, it's musty.
It's got a Brita filter. I always use Brita filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Anyway.
So,
Everyone should watch The Karate Kid. I feel like that's the point.
yeah. Moral of the story is.
So when you were living at your, so you're continuing your therapy, right? You're, you obviously have some form of income, to some extent, and
Yeah.
and you're going to school. And at that point, are you like, okay, like life is really awesome?
Yeah. So, like, compared to where I came from, pretty much anything was awesome at that point. Sometimes I'm a little sad, like, when I look back on, like, the couple of fun things I did, because, like, I'm not going to lie, I had a lot of fun, it just stopped being fun.
And it costs a lot. Like,
Yeah.
Of time
and like health and like after a while it takes a toll, like you just can't be doing that and like be healthy. So I'm able to like go to the gym again, and like I'm playing guitar, and I'm like even going to like perform in front of people, and like I'm going back to school and actually making a dent in my degree program, and I have a vehicle again and my own place, and I'm making friends here, and I have a life again, one that's not worth losing, because when you're out there doing drugs and partying, your like addiction almost sets up a life that, well, it doesn't matter, I might as well just do this anyways because I got nothing to lose, and addiction kind of sets you up to just keep doing that, but the further you
eventually
get
the stakes get a little high.
Yeah.
I was just, Aaron and I were talking about that the other day. It seems like in use, like eventually there gets to be a point where the stakes are high. Like, there are things to lose, and that's when like there's a little bit of a difference. Maybe there's a difference before that too, but there's definitely like there's a point that you reach where the stakes are high enough to where like just going and using is not something that you so like approach with ease. It's like, whoa, hold on, like there's actually some things on the line here.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Like the further I get away from it, the
higher the stakes, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. The more sense it makes to, like, it wouldn't make sense to ever do that again. Like, because when I was using, you know, I
there's
forgot
not a
where
lot
I
of
was going
loss.
with that.
I mean, there's no, like, let's say you're in the middle of it. It seems like this is, like, you're in the middle of it, and, like, using again, there's not a whole lot to lose from that single instance. Like, there may be an amount to lose of, like, using, like, if you're like, oh, should I use for the next 30 times in a row?
Yeah.
I mean, then you might be able to create some tangible amount of loss there.
Yeah.
But, like, using just this next time
Yeah.
truly probably is not a lot to lose. Like, just this next time, and then if you truly don't use again, it's like that 30 times in a row, which obviously you can argue is, like, built up one by one. But nonetheless, like, there comes a time where the stakes are, like, man, even just a couple times, like, I'm really putting a lot in jeopardy that really is. I think what's interesting is that would be a lot of work to get back.
It would.
I mean,
That's another thing. I'm like, I don't want to do all this again. You know, like this was a lot of work. I don't.
It wasn't all that fun.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. It wasn't that much fun.
It wasn't Florida.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And the thing is, the like further I get into my recovery, like the more I can do these things.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm going to Hawaii next week. Like, right?
No concerts, right?
No.
I'm just joking.
I know.
No, I'm just
and you know, like you can go to concerts if you have like good people with you. You know,
I'm
like I was
totally
gonna go
joking.
with like some bad people, and like I mean, like I will see Wu-Tang one day, but you know, like I needed some more time.
A little
like,
better supporting cast.
Yeah, I was like following like a pattern. I didn't even realize it, you know. And like when I was out there using, like my biggest fear was I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to get in trouble because then my future's ruined because I'll have a record. And that was like my big thing. And I did end up actually getting pulled over, and I almost got a DUI, but I got reckless driving, and that did screw me up a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, you make these things, and I didn't even realize it happened. Like, I didn't even realize I passed that point because I was so far gone anyways. And thank God that was the only time I got arrested. But I literally didn't learn anything from it at the time, you know. It didn't make any difference to me. Yeah. So now I can't imagine like when I'm sitting in school in the math lab and I hear these people talking about like getting like super wasted. I'm like, how can you even remember any of this stuff? Like, and like go get hammered and like be able to do that. I can't do both. There's no way I could do both.
I gotta choose,
Yeah, like there's just no way, you know. And I'm just kind of like laughing about it. I'm like, I've already done that. I've already been there, you know.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Played that game.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't end too well.
Yeah, I'm like, have fun with your hangovers, you know. No, thank you. I'm over it. And like when I used to think about it, I used to get kind of sad. Like, am I never gonna be able to drink again? You know, am I never gonna be able to go out and have like drinks with my friends or whatever? And for a while. I was like, I don't know.
I think that's valid.
tough.
We've heard that before,
Yeah.
where people they've described it as mourning. You really have to kind of mourn that you are not going to experience that, and it's like, especially when you contrast that with what maybe appropriately worded or not, like with normal people you don't get to experience what I've heard it said like normies, what the normies do. You have to mourn those things. Like to some extent, and you have to. You understand that. It's the best thing for you, but it's nonetheless, it still can be perceived in some ways, and sometimes like as a little bit of loss.
It doesn't feel fair.
It is.
Yeah,
exactly. You're like, why do I have to like not be able to do these things because like I was born different, because like the way I think about it is I was just like, I was born into being an addict, it was there before I even knew it. I was prone to addiction in my family, and then with the trauma and everything else, my environment, it was almost like I didn't have a choice. It just happened. Nowadays, I have a choice.
And I would say that maybe you have a choice, like, until you don't. Like, if you use a few times, like your choice kind of fades away. I think there's a point where you're hooked to a point.
Yeah.
You can get out, but like it's quite a bit harder. You got a few things latched onto you there.
It is hard, and like I don't have a choice in how it affects me after I use it.
Sure.
Is basically what I don't have a choice in. And like I can be sad about that, or I can be like,
gotta make the best out of this.
Well, I'm like, the way I see it today, I'm like, I want to live a life where I don't have to go out and have drinks to be happy, or to feel good. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do that for fun. I can have fun in other ways. And the way I see it now, it's like, if other people do that, that's cool. That's okay. But I want to do something else now. I've done that stuff.
And I think what's interesting, or what's cool, really, is that listening to you talk, you've expressed, like, I've done that, like you said that, and like kind of you're ready for something new. And the fact of the matter is that you got a lot of life for this new venture. Some people want to try. Some people get to or kind of have those same feelings, those same thoughts, and not that it's pointless. I'm not saying that, but they're like 60 years old. Legitimately.
Yeah.
And you can make an argument for them that you're like, man, you still got 15 years.
Yeah.
You got,
I have the rest of my life.
Gym, you still got, 70 years.
I canceled my gym membership for the summer too.
Yeah.
So.
Because it's just too nice out.
Yeah. It's just weird. I don't want to go in there. Any excuse not to go, and I'm gonna take it. Damn it.
So like 50 years left.
Yeah.
Okay. Still a long time. Dark.
That's a long time.
I
know.
feel like that's being pretty generous.
Yeah. You never know.
Okay. 55 years.
There you go.
Puts you up to like 82 or something.
Yeah.
82. That's pretty good life.
Right. And so I have my whole life ahead of me, and the way I see it is like, and maybe I just say this to make myself feel better about what happened. Like, no matter what, our lives are like on a certain path. And like, you're gonna experience these things regardless. So like, the way I saw it, I went through it young instead of having a midlife crisis when I'm like 30 or 40 and have kids and like a house and like and a career, and I go out and go crazy because like I have that in me, that like need to like go wild for a while, and I ruined that,
It's so hard.
Yeah.
We've watched that kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
People have good degrees, they have good jobs, they
Yeah.
have good families, and next thing you know, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Man.
Exactly.
They've lost everything, and now they're 55, you know? I mean, things like that, you're just like, man. That could have happened at 20.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's, like, what I was, like, thinking when I was that age, too. I was like, I'm just going to get this out of my system now because it's here and I need to do it. You know, I have this in me. And I didn't realize that that was just, like, a bunch of, like, unresolved issues in me. And, you know, maybe I could have went about it in a different way, but I didn't. And that's the way I wanted to go about it. And now I'm resolving these issues a little bit to make it so I don't need to do that. Yeah.
So, I guess that pretty much takes us up to today. For some of, I guess, for like some younger people who are trying to figure this out, like, because I would say that you're a younger person that's kind of figured it out and will continue to figure it out. What are some of the things that you might, like, not like necessarily say to like a younger you, but like say to like somebody like maybe around, like in your shoes, like, because there's some, like, are you like, man, I'm like, I did these couple things, and if I wouldn't have done those, I don't know if that would have worked out very well. Or like, what is there any kind of advice?
I wish I had just asked for help, to begin with, you know. I didn't know how to ask for help at the time. But if I had just, like, opened up and said what was going on, to someone, I think that would have helped. And I did, but I think I only said it to 1 or 2 people, and it wasn't enough. And if there's something going on where you feel like you need to, like, smoke weed or, like, drink or do drugs to, like, feel better, that's not gonna work for very long, and it's gonna end up making you feel worse in the long run, and it doesn't actually fix anything. And there's ways you can get help that you know, like counseling or going to a doctor or just doing group therapy or talking to someone will really, really help you find a different path. Because, you know, I am grateful for my experience, but I wish that I could go back. And
there's not a lot of I mean, there's no guarantee that you do that same kind of path that you're here today, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm surprised.
A little bit of fentanyl in your heroin
and you're dead.
Done.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I mean, that's just the end of the end of the road.
Or you could go to prison for the rest of your life or whatever, you know. Like, I mean, I got lucky, you know, in a weird way, and like there's no guarantee for that. And I've met people that have overdosed and that have overdosed and been brought back, and like they're just not right in the head anymore, you know, because obviously that kills brain cells. And like I didn't realize the damage I was doing to myself when I was drinking and doing drugs. You know, I thought it was fun and I thought I was young and it was okay. But there's like a lifelong damage that I gotta deal with now. And yeah, you know, I probably could have been a lot further in life if I had just chosen a different path. But I didn't. Yeah, like I go into the jails once a week sometimes, and I talk to the girls there, and I tell them, like, it's never too late, you know, to change. It's never too late for anybody to change. I've seen people from age like 18 to age like 60 in rehab go through these programs and get help and make their life better. And not one of them has ever been bummed that they got help. If you're going through something and you think you can do it alone, maybe you can, but why would you? Why would you do it by yourself? Why not get help? Why not make it easier on yourself? There's no shame in it. You know, it took me a really long time to thinking I could do this by myself. I can quit by myself. And it never worked out too well. And once I did get help, it was just so much easier and so much faster, and so much more effective going through a program and not just depriving myself of my only coping mechanism and just expecting the best.
Yeah.
You know, because you need to learn a new way. And you're not gonna figure it out on your own. Some people do, but I mean,
it's kind of like reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to. Like, there's programs set up. There's you can go to a meeting. You can go to an AA meeting, an NA meeting. You can go to your doctor and tell them you're having a problem with addiction or mental health. You can go to a program, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab. There's trauma centers. There's places you can go to just get like a rehab just for your trauma. You know, it doesn't even have to be an addiction problem. It's just a problem that you're having. Yeah, there's just so much help out there nowadays, and there's just no shame in it, because it's not your fault, you know.
Yeah. You
don't choose what your brain does. You don't choose how you react to things. And you don't choose where you came from. But you can choose where you go from there. And that's how I feel about it. You know, I have a choice today in what I do and where I go. And that's because I asked for help. And I'm really, really grateful for all the programs and community stuff there is here, because not only did it make it easier, but like I'm having fun and my life is good, and I love my life today, you know. I'm going to concerts now, and I just went camping with a bunch of people, like sober, like nobody had to like drink to like be okay with each other, and yeah, like I'm doing stuff today, and yeah, I love my life today like this, and I'm not sad about the fact that I won't ever be able to like drink or like go trip balls in the woods on mushrooms or whatever, you know, like I'm excited about the new experience of like figuring out life without it. And figuring out healthy ways to alter my brain chemistry, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of the way I see it now. I'm like, this life thing is a whole new trip, you know, for me. Because this is a whole new experience, you know. I wanted new experiences by, like, using and drinking and stuff, and, like, this is a whole new experience. Being sober and clean is a whole new experience for me, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I have to look at it. today. I don't know about tomorrow. It changes. It evolves. So, but I'm growing today. So sometimes it's painful, but for the most part, I'm moving forward finally. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think one of the things, you said a lot of great things. I think one of the things that stuck out to me was I think you might have said it, Coburn. I think you did. Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Yeah, right.
And you can, I don't have Serenity intakes off this number off the top of my head, but you can Google Serenity House Soldotna, Serenity House Kenai. I'm sure you can Google both. And you can call the intake office, the Serenity. You have the number. Okay, so you can call this number that Jaclyn, no, I'm just kidding, Jaclyn is going to say.
Their number is 907-714-4521. Just call and say, I need some help.
Can you read that again?
907-714-4521. Just call and say you want to do an intake or talk to somebody about getting some help. You can even call for someone else and ask what you need to do. They're super accommodating, and they'll even tell you how to get health insurance and what to do, because that was one of my worries, like, how am I going to pay for this? They can help you get Medicaid, so I'm very, very grateful. I went through their program. It was awesome. It was super awesome. I thought it was going to be scary and uncomfortable, and for the most part, it was just good. Yeah. I really liked it, actually, which is a super weird thing to say about rehab, but
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
There it is.
It's the truth.
Well, you can find hope and recovery at Serenity House, and if that ends up not being like the place, that's still a good place to call and figure out what some of your next options might be. And as Jaclyn said, for both yourself or a loved one or somebody you might know. So yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This was Coburn and Pira left, but Pira and
we'll definitely talk about it next podcast.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And Aaron, he was back today. He was gone for the last one, but he was back. And then Jaclyn, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Telling your story. Another episode of You and I for the Kenai.